Tonight, you wake before sunrise in Japan, in the early years of the Edo period. The long age of civil war has finally ended, yet the memory of it still lingers in the quiet habits of every household, every castle town, and every road that winds between the mountains. The year is around 1620. Tokugawa rule has brought a new kind of order to the islands, and although battles no longer rage across the valleys as they once did, the samurai have not disappeared. They have changed. Their swords remain at their side, their training continues, their honor still shapes the rhythm of each day, but now their lives are often filled as much with writing, service, discipline, and ceremony as with war. You are a low-ranking samurai retainer in service to a local lord, not a legendary warrior whose name will be carved into history, but one of the many men whose quiet obedience holds the world together. Your home is modest, built of wood, paper, and shadow. The floor beneath you is covered with woven tatami mats. Beyond the thin shoji doors, the morning air is cool and pale. A faint mist rests over the garden stones, and somewhere in the distance a temple bell sounds once through the stillness. For a moment, you remain lying beneath your bedding, listening. The house is quiet, except for the soft movement of your own breathing and the low crackle of charcoal beginning to warm the room. Outside, a bird calls from the branch of a pine tree. The sound is small, but in the silence before dawn, it feels clear enough to fill the entire morning. You rise slowly. There is no hurry, yet there is no laziness either. A samurai household begins the day with order. Every action has its place. Bedding is folded carefully. The room is straightened. Water is poured into a basin. The face and hands are washed in the cold morning air. The chill sharpens the senses, reminding the body that comfort is not always the first duty of the day. Your clothing is simple but dignified. Layers of kimono are arranged with practiced hands. The fabric is not extravagant, but it is clean. The colors are quiet: brown, gray, indigo, muted green. The world you live in does not admire unnecessary display from a man of your rank. Restraint is part of beauty. Discipline is part of appearance. Before leaving the room, your eyes fall upon the swords resting nearby, the longer katana and the shorter wakizashi. Together they mark your status more clearly than any words could. They are weapons, but they are also symbols, reminders that you belong to a class expected to serve, protect, obey, and, if necessary, die without hesitation. In this peaceful age, many samurai may never draw their swords in battle, yet the presence of the blades shapes every movement, every bow, every silence. You fasten them carefully at your side. The weight is familiar, not heavy enough to burden you, but present enough to remind you who you are expected to be. Outside, the sky is beginning to soften from black to blue. The first light touches the tiled roofs of nearby houses. Smoke rises slowly from kitchen fires. The scent of rice, miso, and damp wood drifts through the narrow lanes. Servants and townspeople are already moving quietly through the morning. A woman carries water from a well. An old man sweeps dust from the front of a small shop. A child follows behind his mother with sleepy eyes, clutching the edge of her sleeve. The castle town wakes gradually, not with the noise of a great city, but with a steady unfolding of ordinary life. Wooden shutters open. Dogs stretch in doorways. Merchants arrange goods beneath hanging signs. A fishmonger rinses his baskets. A paper lantern left burning through the night flickers weakly before being extinguished. You eat a simple meal before duty: steamed rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables. Perhaps a small piece of fish if the household has been fortunate. Food is taken with gratitude rather than indulgence. The meal is warm, plain, and enough. In a world shaped by Confucian ideas of order and restraint, excess is rarely admired, especially among those expected to carry responsibility. After breakfast, you step into the lane and begin walking toward the castle. The road beneath your sandals is firm earth, still damp from the night. Above the rooftops, the castle rises on its stone base, white walls catching the first sunlight. Its curved roofs appear almost weightless against the sky. Yet everything about it speaks of authority. The moats, the gates, the watchtowers, the careful arrangement of walls designed not only for beauty, but for defense. Even in peace, architecture remembers war. As you pass through the town, people bow according to rank. Some lower their heads deeply, others offer a smaller gesture. Hierarchy is woven into daily life so thoroughly that it rarely needs to be spoken aloud. Everyone knows where they stand. Samurai, merchants, artisans, farmers, priests, servants. The order is not always fair, and it is not always gentle, but it gives structure to the world of early Edo Japan. At the outer gate, other retainers gather. Some are older men who survived the final battles before peace was secured. Others are younger, like you, raised in the shadow of war, but unlikely to experience it directly. There is pride in this, but also uncertainty. What does it mean to be a warrior in an age that no longer requires constant war? This question follows many samurai through the Edo period. The sword remains, but the battlefield slowly gives way to administration, etiquette, scholarship, and service. A man trained to fight must also learn to write reports, study law, manage land, attend ceremonies, and maintain the dignity of his lord's household. Inside the castle grounds, gravel crunches softly beneath your feet. Pine trees stand carefully pruned beside stone paths. A garden pond reflects the pale morning sky. Everything appears calm, yet every detail has been arranged with intention. Japanese gardens often suggest nature rather than imitate it completely. A stone may represent a mountain. Raked gravel may suggest flowing water. Emptiness itself becomes part of the design. Your morning duties begin in a room lined with tatami. Sliding doors open toward the garden. A senior official reviews messages from nearby villages. Taxes must be recorded. Rice yields estimated. Roads maintained. Disputes settled before they grow into deeper resentment. Peace requires constant work. Far more work, perhaps, than war itself. You kneel with other retainers, listening carefully. Posture matters. Silence matters. The ability to remain still is its own form of discipline. When spoken to, you answer clearly and without unnecessary words. A careless phrase can reveal an undisciplined mind. A samurai is expected to control not only his body, but his speech. Later in the morning, there is training. Not battle, not glory, but repetition. The practice yard lies within the castle compound, open to the sky. Wooden swords are lifted, stances are corrected, footwork repeated until the body no longer needs instruction. The older instructor walks slowly between the men, watching for impatience, tension, and pride. He has seen enough of real violence to know that the dramatic movements admired by boys are not always useful when life depends upon simplicity. You practice drawing the sword in a single controlled motion, again and again and again. The purpose is not to look impressive. It is to remove hesitation, to make action and awareness arrive together. In the quiet rhythm of practice, time begins to dissolve. Breath, step, draw, return. Breath, step, draw, return. After sword practice comes archery. The bow is tall, elegant, and difficult to master. Arrows are placed carefully. The target waits at a distance. The instructor reminds you that the arrow reveals the mind. A restless thought appears in the hands. An impatient breath changes the path of the shot. The best archers do not merely aim with their eyes, but with their entire posture. By midday, the sun has risen higher above the castle walls. The mist has disappeared from the fields beyond town. Farmers bend over paddies where the water reflects the sky. Although samurai occupy a privileged place in society, the rice grown by farmers supports the entire domain. Every stipend, every household, every official duty depends upon harvests measured in koku, the amount of rice believed sufficient to feed one person for a year. The connection between warrior and farmer is everywhere, even when hidden beneath rank. The sword may symbolize authority, but rice sustains it. Your midday meal is taken quietly with other retainers. Conversations remain measured. One man speaks of a bridge needing repair after spring rains. Another mentions a merchant family requesting permission to expand their storehouse. Someone else quietly discusses poetry, recalling a verse about autumn wind passing through reeds. Such conversations may seem ordinary, yet they reveal the changing nature of samurai life. The warrior class is becoming a bureaucratic class, still armed, still proud, but increasingly tied to paper, land, and law. In the afternoon, you are sent beyond the castle town to inspect a road leading toward a nearby village. The path follows a river, whose clear water moves over stones worn smooth by centuries. Bamboo leans gently over the bank. Dragonflies hover above the reeds. The sound of the castle fades behind you, replaced by the softer rhythm of the countryside. Along the road, travelers move in small groups. A Buddhist monk in plain robes walks with a begging bowl. Two merchants carry bundles suspended from poles across their shoulders. A farmer leads an ox slowly toward the fields. Everyone steps aside when samurai pass, though you notice the monk bows no more deeply than necessary. Religion gives him a different kind of authority, quieter than rank, but not without power. Near the village, a small Shinto shrine stands beneath cedar trees. Its torii gate is weathered by rain and time. Paper streamers hang from a sacred rope. The air feels cooler beneath the branches. Villagers leave offerings of rice, sake, and seasonal fruit, asking the kami for protection, good harvests, and safe childbirth. In this world, the sacred is not distant. It lives in trees, stones, rivers, mountains, and old places where memory gathers. You pause only briefly, bowing before continuing down the road. Even a samurai does not pass a shrine carelessly. The village itself is modest. Thatched roofs, storage sheds, small gardens, the smell of earth and straw. Children watch from doorways as you arrive. The headman greets you with careful respect and explains the problem. Heavy rains have damaged part of the road, making it difficult for carts to pass. If the path worsens, rice transport will slow before the next collection. You inspect the damage, kneel beside the broken edge, press the mud between your fingers, note where water has gathered. The task is not heroic, yet it matters. An empire survives through things like this. Roads repaired before they fail. Records kept before disputes grow. Harvests measured before hunger begins. By late afternoon, the inspection is complete. Instructions are given. Workers will reinforce the road with stone and packed earth. The village headman bows again, and you begin the walk back toward town. The light has changed. Everything is warmer now. The river glows gold where the sun touches it. Cicadas sing from the trees. Smoke rises from village hearths as evening meals are prepared. The world feels peaceful, but not empty. Every field, Bridge, shrine, and footpath carries the quiet labor of countless people. As you return to the castle town, lanterns are being lit outside shops and inns. The market has grown livelier. Merchants call softly to passing customers. The smell of grilled fish, soy, rice cakes, and tea fills the street. A traveling storyteller has gathered a small audience near a bridge, speaking of old battles from the age before Tokugawa peace. Children listen with wide eyes, imagining a world their parents may still remember too clearly. You stop for a moment at the edge of the crowd. The storyteller describes warriors charging through smoke, banners torn by wind, arrows darkening the sky. The words are exciting, yet you notice the older men nearby do not smile in the same way as the children. To them, war is not only legend, it is memory, hunger, fear, burned villages, lost sons. Perhaps peace feels dull only to those who never had to survive without it. Back at your home, the evening routine begins. Swords are placed carefully, sandals removed, hands washed. The room darkens gradually as the last light fades behind the roofs. A small oil lamp is lit. Its flame trembles against the paper walls. Outside, crickets begin their night song. Before sleep, there is still study. Many samurai of this period read Confucian texts, military treatises, poetry, or family records. You open a worn book and trace the characters slowly. Learning is not separate from discipline. The brush, like the sword, reveals the mind. A careless stroke cannot be hidden. Ink preserves hesitation as clearly as confidence. You practice calligraphy for a while. Each line requires breath, patience, and control. The world narrows to black ink, moving across pale paper. No audience watches, no praise follows. Yet this too is part of the life you have inherited, the shaping of the self through small, repeated actions. Later, the household grows quiet. The meal is finished. The lamp burns lower. Beyond the thin walls, the town settles into darkness. Somewhere far away, a night watchman strikes wooden clappers together, marking the hour. The sound carries through the lanes, then fades. You lie down upon the bedding, listening to the night. The swords rest nearby, silent in the shadows. Tomorrow will bring more duties, more bows, more records, more practice. Perhaps no battle will ever come, and perhaps that is a blessing. Perhaps the highest purpose of a warrior in a peaceful age is not to seek violence, but to preserve the stillness others depend upon. Outside, the moon rises above the castle roofs. Silver light touches the garden stones. The pine trees move gently in the wind, and as sleep begins to settle over the town, feudal Japan becomes quiet once more. Not frozen in history, not trapped in legend, but alive in small details. Rice steaming in a wooden bowl, ink drying on paper, sandals beside a door, temple bells in the morning, crickets at night, and a single samurai, unknown to history, resting before another ordinary day of service begins. The next morning arrives with no dramatic announcement, only a gradual softening of darkness behind the paper walls. Before the sun itself appears, the world turns grey, then pale blue, then faintly gold along the edges of the roof tiles. You wake to the same quiet order as the day before, yet no two mornings feel exactly alike. The air is cooler today. A thin mist lies low across the road. Dew gathers on the garden moss. Somewhere nearby, water drips slowly from a bamboo spout into a stone basin. The sound is gentle and perfectly spaced, as though the garden itself is breathing. You rise, fold your bedding, wash in cold water, and dress carefully once more. The movements are familiar, almost meditative. In a samurai household, Discipline is not only found in great moments of danger, it lives in ordinary gestures repeated until they become part of the self. The way cloth is folded, the way a sword is placed, the way a greeting is offered, the way silence is held without discomfort. After a simple breakfast, you are summoned earlier than usual to the castle offices. A message has arrived from another domain, carried along the road by official courier. The document bears seals that must not be damaged, and formal language that must be interpreted carefully. In this peaceful age, paper often travels with more consequence than arrows once did. A senior retainer reads the letter aloud. A neighboring lord intends to send representatives through the town on their way to Edo. Proper lodging must be arranged. Roads must be swept. Gates prepared. Guards assigned. Gifts selected according to rank. No detail is too small, because etiquette itself has become a language of power. A poorly chosen seat, an incorrect bow, a delay at the gate. All these things can suggest disrespect where none was intended. You are assigned to assist with preparations along the main street. By mid-morning, townspeople have already begun cleaning storefronts and hanging fresh Norin curtains above shop entrances. Merchants understand that official visitors bring both opportunity and scrutiny. A well-ordered town reflects well upon the lord who governs it. As you walk through the street, you notice how many lives quietly depend upon the peace of the Tokugawa order. The swordsmith who once forged blades for battle now repairs tools and makes fittings for ceremonial swords. The armorer polishes helmets that may never again be worn in war. The innkeeper prepares rooms for traveling officials instead of fleeing armies. The tea seller arranges cups for customers who speak of prices, weather, and family matters, rather than troop movements. Peace has not erased the warrior world, but it has changed what the warrior world requires. Near the edge of town, you stop at a small workshop where a craftsman is repairing lacquered boxes used for official documents. His hands move slowly, with extraordinary care. Each layer of lacquer must be applied, dried, and polished before the next can begin. The process cannot be rushed. Watching him, you are reminded that craftsmanship and discipline share the same root. Both require patience with invisible progress. Most of the work is hidden beneath the final surface. By noon, the sun has burned away the mist. The town becomes warmer and louder. Horses are watered near the stable. Porters carry bundles of rice straw. Children run between houses until scolded by an older woman. A group of monks passes quietly through the street, their robes moving like shadows against the pale dust. You return briefly to the castle for instruction. Inside, the corridors are cool and dim. Wooden floors shine from years of careful polishing. Sliding doors reveal glimpses of rooms arranged with deliberate simplicity. A hanging scroll, a flower placed in a small vase, an inkstone beside folded paper. Nothing excessive, nothing accidental. Beauty here is often created by what is left out. In the afternoon, you accompany 2 other retainers to inspect the guest quarters, where the visiting officials will stay. Tatami mats are checked for wear. Bedding is aired. The garden view from the main room is considered. Even the placement of a screen matters. Honor is communicated through arrangement. Hospitality is not merely kindness, but order made visible. As the preparations continue, an older samurai speaks quietly beside you. He remembers the final years of the wars, when men slept in armor and every distant fire might mean an enemy raid. He does not romanticize that time. Younger men often imagine war as a place where courage becomes clear. But those who lived through it remember mud, hunger, smoke, and confusion. He tells you that peace requires a different courage. The courage to remain useful when glory is no longer available. His words stay with you as evening approaches. The visiting party will not arrive until the following day, Yet the town already feels changed by expectation. Lanterns are lit earlier. The main road has been swept clean. Fresh water stands ready for horses. The gate guards rehearse their positions. Everyone performs a small part in a larger ritual of order. After your duties end, you take a longer path home along the moat. The water is still, reflecting the castle walls and the slowly darkening sky. Koi move beneath the surface like drifting shadows. Reeds bend at the water's edge. Beyond the moat, the town glows with the first lanterns of evening. There is time before sleep, so you visit a small temple near the hillside. Stone steps lead upward beneath cedar trees. The air grows cooler as you climb. At the top, incense drifts from a bronze burner. A monk sweeps fallen leaves from the courtyard with steady, unhurried strokes. Each movement seems less like labor than practice. You sit for a short while near the veranda, listening to the wind move through the branches. Zen teachings have become increasingly influential among the warrior class. Not because they promise escape from duty, but because they teach attention within duty. To sit fully, to breathe fully, to act without scattering the mind. Such ideas appeal to men expected to face uncertainty with composure. Yet tonight there is no battle to prepare for, only another day of service. Still, the same lesson applies. The mind that cannot be present in peace will not suddenly become steady in danger. When you return home, night has settled completely. The household lamp glows softly. Rice is served. Tea is poured. Somewhere beyond the walls, a flute plays a slow melody, perhaps from a nearby inn where travelers have stopped for the night. The tune rises and falls through the darkness, never loud enough to disturb, only present enough to remind you that other lives continue nearby. Before sleeping, you write a few lines in your private notes. Not a grand diary, not a record meant for history, only a quiet account of the day. The visiting party expected tomorrow. The road swept clean. The old retainer's words about peace. The temple courtyard beneath cedar trees. The ink dries slowly. You close the book, place the brush aside, and lie down beneath the soft weight of night. Tomorrow will bring ceremony, visitors, bows, careful speech, and watchful silence. But for now, all of that waits beyond sleep. The castle rests, the town rests, the road lies empty beneath moonlight, and somewhere in the dark, the temple bell waits patiently for morning. The following morning arrives beneath a sky washed clean by rain during the night. The air carries the fresh scent of cedar, damp earth, and wet stone. Every roof tile glistens beneath the first rays of sunlight, while tiny drops of water cling to bamboo leaves before falling quietly into the moss below. The town seems almost newly built, as though the rain has polished away yesterday and offered everyone another beginning. Today is the day the visiting officials will arrive. Long before the gates open, servants are already sweeping the final traces of dust from the streets. Buckets of clean water are carried from wells. Banners bearing the crest of your lord hang neatly above the entrance to the castle. Every detail has been prepared with care, because reputation in this world is often built from the smallest observations. You take your assigned position beside the outer gate with several other retainers. Conversation is minimal. Everyone understands their responsibilities without needing constant instruction. Patience becomes part of the morning. Waiting itself is a skill. As the hours pass, travelers continue entering the town. Farmers bringing vegetables for the market. Merchants leading pack horses loaded with silk and paper. Pilgrims carrying walking staffs decorated with small bells that chime softly as they move along the road. Each bows respectfully before continuing on their own journey. The great highways of the Edo period connect villages, temples, castles, and ports across the islands, allowing ideas and goods to travel as steadily as people themselves. Not long before midday, the distant sound of horses reaches the gate. First comes the rhythmic clatter of hooves upon packed earth, then the appearance of banners rising above the road, beyond the trees. The visiting procession advances slowly and with remarkable order. Mounted samurai ride at the front, while attendants walk beside carefully packed supplies. Everyone moves with measured dignity rather than haste. This is not an army preparing for battle, but an official delegation demonstrating discipline through composure. As they approach, both groups exchange formal bows according to rank. Introductions are brief, respectful, and precise. Hospitality begins before a single word about business is spoken. Once the guests have entered the castle, much of the afternoon is spent ensuring their comfort. Fresh tea is prepared. Writing materials are placed within their rooms. Horses are watered and brushed. Even the gardens receive attention, so that the visitors, should they choose to look through the open shoji screens, will see ponds free of fallen leaves and carefully raked gravel untouched by footprints. In the West, power is often displayed through grandeur. Here it is equally displayed through restraint. Nothing is excessive, yet nothing appears neglected. With your responsibilities complete for the day, you are granted several hours before sunset. Instead of returning directly home, you choose to walk beyond the town toward the surrounding countryside. The road climbs gently through low hills, where rice fields stretch across the landscape, like mirrors reflecting the afternoon sky. Farmers work quietly among the water, their wide straw hats casting shadows across their faces. They pause only briefly as you pass before returning to their careful rhythm. Watching them, you understand that every bowl of rice eaten within the castle began here, beneath the open sky, through countless hours of patient labor. Farther along the path, the fields give way to forest. Towering cedar and cypress trees surround the narrow trail, their trunks rising like great pillars into the canopy above. Sunlight filters through the branches in long golden beams, illuminating drifting particles of dust and pollen that seem to float without hurry. The forest possesses a silence unlike that of the town, not empty, but alive with subtle sounds. Distant birds, leaves moving gently against one another, the quiet murmur of a hidden stream somewhere beyond the trees. In Shinto belief, places like this are often thought to be inhabited by kami, spirits not separate from nature, but present within it. Standing among these ancient trees, it becomes easy to understand why. Eventually, the trail leads to a small mountain shrine, seldom visited except by nearby villagers. Moss has softened the edges of every stone step. A weathered torii gate marks the entrance, its wood faded by decades of rain and winter snow. Beneath the shelter of the shrine roof hang small wooden prayer plaques, left by travelers asking for safe journeys, healthy children, or successful harvests. Some have darkened with age until the ink has almost disappeared, yet they remain where they were placed years before, carrying the quiet hopes of people long since forgotten. You sit for a while upon the wooden veranda overlooking the valley below. From here, the castle town appears small. Smoke rises lazily from cooking fires. The river winds through the fields like a silver ribbon. Beyond it, mountains fade into the blue distance. It is a peaceful view, yet you cannot help wondering how different it must have looked only a generation earlier, when armies marched across these same valleys. Where there is now birdsong, there may once have been shouting. Where children now play beside irrigation channels, soldiers once crossed carrying spears and banners. Peace often arrives so gradually that people forget how extraordinary it truly is. As the sun begins its slow descent, You make your way back toward the town. The evening market is busier than usual because of the visiting delegation. Lanterns sway gently above shop entrances, while merchants call quietly to passing customers. An elderly craftsman demonstrates the careful folding of paper into decorative shapes. Nearby, a potter arranges freshly fired bowls, whose glazed surfaces catch the orange glow of the setting sun. Two musicians sit beneath the eaves of a tea house, one playing the shamisen, while the other sings an old ballad from the days of the Great Wars. The melody is calm, almost nostalgic, as though remembering hardship from a safe distance. You pause beside a tea stall and are offered a small cup of freshly prepared green tea. The owner recognizes you from previous visits and bows warmly. There is comfort in such familiar faces. Not every relationship in this world is defined solely by rank. Over years of shared mornings and quiet conversations, mutual respect grows naturally between people whose lives cross again and again within the same streets. Darkness settles gradually across the valley. One by one, the lanterns become brighter than the fading sky. Reflections shimmer upon the surface of the moat. Somewhere high within the castle, a watchman strikes a wooden clapper, its hollow sound echoing across the rooftops before disappearing into the night. Families gather inside their homes. Meals are shared. Children drift toward sleep, while grandparents tell stories of fox spirits, wandering monks and brave warriors from another age. Outside, the roads empty until only an occasional traveler passes beneath the moonlight. You return home carrying little more than the memory of another ordinary day. Yet perhaps that is exactly what makes it beautiful. History often remembers emperors, generals, and battles. But the true rhythm of any civilization is found in days like these. Mornings filled with birdsong, roads repaired after rain, tea shared between neighbors, letters carefully copied by candlelight, and quiet walks beneath cedar trees. These are the moments that countless people lived, yet almost no chronicles recorded. And as you extinguish the final lamp before lying down once more upon the tatami, the town falls silent around you. Beyond the paper walls, the wind moves gently through the pines. The stars shine above the castle roofs, and another peaceful night settles over feudal Japan, waiting patiently for the dawn that will begin it all again. Days pass gently into one another until the rhythm of the seasons begins to matter more than the turning of the calendar. In feudal Japan, people rarely measure life by dramatic events. Instead, they notice the first plum blossoms appearing before spring, the sound of cicadas announcing summer, the first crimson maple leaf drifting across a temple garden in autumn, and the quiet snowfall that transforms the world each winter. Every season changes not only the landscape, but the duties, clothing, meals, and pace of daily life. Today, as you step outside before sunrise, the air carries the unmistakable scent of approaching autumn. The mornings have become cooler. Mist lingers longer across the river. The cries of birds seem fewer than only a month before. Overhead, clouds drift slowly across a sky so clear that the distant mountains appear closer than usual. You begin your walk toward the castle along a path lined with maple trees whose leaves have only just begun their slow transformation. Here and there, small patches of red and gold interrupt the endless green. In another few weeks, the hillsides will blaze with color, drawing monks, poets, and travelers alike. Among the people of this age, the changing seasons are not merely observed, they are celebrated. Poems are written for them, paintings attempt to preserve them. Entire festivals rise and fall with their arrival. The castle itself feels quieter today. The visiting delegation departed several days ago, leaving behind only orderly records, exchanged gifts and polite letters of gratitude. Much of your morning is now spent within the archives. Rows of carefully bound documents record harvests, taxes, births, marriages, repairs to bridges, maintenance of irrigation canals, and inventories of rice stored within the granaries. At first glance, these pages seem ordinary, yet you realize that this is how peace preserves itself. Wars are remembered through battles. Peaceful generations are remembered through records quietly maintained by people whose names history rarely repeats. Your brush moves steadily across fresh paper as you copy reports into cleaner versions for permanent storage. The scratching of several brushes fills the room with a gentle rhythm. No one speaks unless necessary. Sunlight filters through the paper screens, slowly shifting across the tatami floor as the morning advances. Somewhere beyond the room, you hear distant laughter from servants carrying supplies across the courtyard. Even inside the castle, life continues with remarkable calm. By midday, your duties are complete, and you are sent to accompany an elderly magistrate on a short journey to a nearby village where a disagreement has arisen over the boundary between two rice fields. Years ago, such disputes might have ended with drawn swords or private revenge. Now they are settled through discussion, witnesses, and written agreements. The magistrate walks slowly, leaning upon a wooden staff, yet the respect shown toward him is equal to that given many accomplished warriors. Wisdom, in this age, often carries greater authority than strength. The villagers gather patiently beneath the shade of a large Zelkova tree, while both families explain their understanding of the boundary. Old markers are examined. Nearby streams are traced. Several elderly farmers quietly recall where their parents had always believed the dividing line to be. No voices rise in anger. Everyone understands that preserving harmony within the village is more valuable than winning a few extra rows of rice. After careful discussion, the magistrate reaches a decision accepted by both families with deep bows. No celebration follows, only relief. Peace is often maintained through countless small acts of fairness that few outsiders ever notice. On the return journey, the magistrate tells you stories from his youth. He remembers marching beside armies during the final years before the Tokugawa peace. He speaks not with excitement, but with gratitude, that young men like yourself may never witness such things. Many dream of becoming heroes, he says quietly, until they have seen enough war to understand the value of an ordinary morning. His words remain with you as the sun begins to sink behind the hills. By the time you reach the castle town, preparations are already underway for the coming moon. Viewing festival. Families decorate verandas with simple arrangements of pampas grass. Children help place offerings of rice dumplings upon wooden trays. Musicians tune their instruments beneath open windows, while neighbors exchange greetings in the cooling evening air. Tonight, rather than returning immediately home, you climb a gentle hill overlooking the valley where many townspeople have gathered. Blankets are spread across the grass. Small lanterns glow softly without overpowering the darkness. No one speaks loudly. There is little need. All eyes gradually lift toward the eastern horizon, where the full autumn moon slowly rises above the mountains. It is astonishingly bright, so bright that shadows appear once more upon the ground, as though dawn itself has returned in silver rather than gold. The people around you simply watch. Some quietly drink tea. Others compose short poems upon small sheets of paper. An elderly monk smiles without speaking as clouds drift briefly across the moon before revealing it once more. In moments like these, the pace of life itself seems to slow. No one hurries to leave. No one reaches for distraction. The beauty of the evening is considered complete simply because it exists. You remain there long after many others have departed, listening to the soft chorus of insects hidden within the tall grasses while the moonlight reflects across the river below. From this distance, the castle no longer appears imposing. Instead, it rests quietly within the landscape, just another part of the valley alongside forests, fields, and villages. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson your years of service have quietly offered. Strength builds a nation, but peace allows people to notice the moon. Finally, when the night grows cool enough for dew to gather once more upon the grass, you begin the slow walk home, beneath a sky filled with stars. The road is empty, except for the occasional lantern glowing behind paper windows. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell marks the passing hour before silence returns to the valley. You slide open the door to your home, place your swords carefully beside the wall, extinguish the final lamp, and lie down upon the familiar tatami. Outside, autumn continues its patient work among the maple trees. Inside, the world becomes still. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another bowl of steaming rice, another quiet walk through streets that have known both war and peace. But for now, there is only the sound of the wind moving gently through cedar branches, the distant murmur of flowing water, and the comforting certainty that, for one more night, all is peaceful in feudal Japan. Winter arrives quietly across the valley. There is no single morning when the world suddenly changes, only a series of colder dawns, shorter afternoons, and longer evenings, until one day you slide open the shoji doors and find the garden covered in a thin blanket of fresh snow. Every stone lantern wears a white cap. Every pine branch bends gently beneath the weight. Even the familiar sounds of the town seem softened, as though the snowfall itself has absorbed every unnecessary noise. Your footsteps leave the first tracks across the courtyard as you carry a wooden bucket toward the well. The cold air fills your lungs so sharply that for a moment you simply pause to admire the silence. It is a different silence from summer, deeper, slower, and almost endless. The household wakes later during the winter months. Charcoal braziers glow warmly inside the rooms, while kettles quietly begin to boil. Breakfast remains simple: steamed rice, miso soup enriched with winter vegetables, pickles preserved from the autumn harvest, and hot green tea whose rising steam briefly clouds the room before disappearing into the cool air. Outside, smoke rises from nearly every chimney in the town, drifting lazily upward before dissolving into the pale morning sky. Today, your duties take you beyond the castle walls once again. Heavy snowfall during the night has blocked part of the road leading toward a mountain temple, and several officials wish to ensure that travelers may still pass safely before the next storm arrives. A small group of retainers gathers with wooden shovels rather than weapons. In peaceful times, a samurai may spend as much effort clearing roads as guarding them. No one complains. Every task performed well becomes another way of serving the domain. The journey into the hills feels entirely different beneath winter's touch. Bamboo groves creak softly beneath the weight of snow. Streams continue flowing beneath thin sheets of ice that shimmer like polished glass. Animal tracks cross the untouched white ground. Perhaps a fox searching quietly for food during the early hours before dawn. The mountains themselves appear closer now that the summer haze has disappeared, their dark forests standing in sharp contrast against the bright slopes above. As you climb higher, the world grows quieter still. Even conversation among your companions gradually fades until only the sound of boots compressing fresh snow remains. Each breath leaves a cloud of white mist before vanishing into the cold morning air. Somewhere high above, a raven calls once, before disappearing among the cedars. By midday, the road has been cleared sufficiently for travelers to continue their journey. Nearby stands the mountain temple, its wooden buildings partially hidden beneath ancient cedar trees that have watched over these slopes for centuries. One of the resident monks notices your work and invites the small group inside for tea before beginning the descent back toward the valley. The temple is warm despite the cold outside. Thick wooden beams darkened by generations of incense support the roof above. Tatami mats feel pleasantly dry beneath your feet. A simple iron kettle hangs above a sunken hearth, where glowing charcoal gently heats the water. The monk prepares tea with movements so calm and deliberate that time itself seems to slow around him. No gesture is wasted. Every action follows naturally from the last. Watching him is strangely peaceful, almost as though the ceremony itself is another form of quiet meditation. As you drink, the monk speaks softly about the mountains during winter. He tells you that snow reveals things often hidden during other seasons. Animal tracks become visible. Old paths forgotten beneath summer grass appear once more. The shape of every tree stands exposed without leaves to conceal it. Winter, he says with a gentle smile, is the season that teaches us to see clearly. His words remain in your thoughts long after the cups have been emptied. The return journey begins beneath a sky, slowly filling with pale afternoon light. Snowflakes start falling once again, at first only a few, drifting lazily through the forest, then gradually becoming more numerous, until the path ahead softens beneath countless white shapes, descending without hurry. No wind disturbs them. They simply fall, each taking its own quiet path toward the earth. Back within the castle town, winter life continues with remarkable resilience. Children laugh as they shape small figures from the fresh snow beside their homes. Merchants brush white powder from awnings before reopening their shops. Blacksmiths work beside glowing forges, whose warmth spills invitingly into the street. The scent of roasting chestnuts mingles with wood smoke carried gently through the crisp evening air. Despite the cold, the town feels alive in its own quieter way. After your final duties are complete, you find yourself walking once more along the moat surrounding the castle. The water has become perfectly still, reflecting both the snow-covered walls and the first stars beginning to appear overhead. Lantern light glows warmly from the windows beyond the bridge, creating golden reflections that ripple only slightly across the dark surface. Somewhere inside the castle, someone practices the shakuhachi, the deep, breathy notes of the bamboo flute drifting across the winter air with extraordinary softness. The melody rises and falls so slowly that it almost seems to blend with the falling snow itself. You stop for several minutes simply to listen. No audience gathers, no applause follows. Perhaps the musician does not even know another person has paused outside to hear. Yet moments like these quietly become some of the most memorable. Beauty offered without expectation often leaves the deepest impression. When you finally return home, darkness has settled completely across the valley. Your clothing carries tiny flecks of melting snow. The room is warm once more. The charcoal brazier glows softly, while the familiar scent of cedar wood fills the air. After supper, you sit briefly beside the lamp and read a few pages from an old collection of poems describing the changing seasons. Many were written centuries before your own lifetime, yet they feel strangely familiar, reminding you that countless people before you have watched the same moon, the same snowfall, and the same mountains through equally quiet evenings. The lamp grows dimmer as the oil slowly burns away. Outside, snow continues falling without sound upon rooftops, temple gates, bridges, and sleeping gardens. Somewhere beyond the town, the forest gradually disappears beneath another fresh white blanket that will greet tomorrow's travelers with untouched beauty. You place the book carefully beside the wall, fold your outer robe, extinguish the final light, and settle once more upon the tatami. Beneath the peaceful silence of winter, surrounded by mountains that have stood unchanged for ages, another day gently comes to an end in feudal Japan. And while history often remembers only its great battles and famous names, it is nights like these, quiet, ordinary, and filled with simple human moments, that truly formed the heart of an entire civilization. Spring returns almost unnoticed. The last patches of snow disappear from the shaded hillsides. Streams begin running faster with melting water from the mountains, and the valley slowly awakens from its winter silence. One morning you step outside to discover the plum trees already flowering. Delicate white blossoms cover branches that only weeks earlier seemed lifeless. Before long, the cherry trees will follow, drawing travelers from distant provinces simply to witness a beauty that lasts only a handful of days. The people of Japan have long understood that some of the most precious things in life endure only briefly, and perhaps nowhere is that lesson more visible than beneath the falling petals of spring. The castle town becomes noticeably livelier. Merchants who spent much of winter indoors reopen their storefronts completely. Fresh cloth banners flutter above narrow streets. Fishermen return with larger catches as rivers grow active once more, and farmers begin preparing the paddies for another growing season. Water floods the carefully leveled fields until they reflect the sky so perfectly that walking beside them feels like traveling between two worlds, one above and one below. Your duties today begin outside the castle. The annual inspection of irrigation canals is approaching, and several retainers have been assigned to travel through nearby farming villages to ensure that winter storms have not damaged the waterways upon which the entire harvest depends. It may seem like an ordinary task, yet everyone understands its importance. Without clean water, there is no rice. Without rice, there is no tax. Without tax, the domain cannot support its people, its roads, its temples, or even the castle itself. A peaceful nation rests upon thousands of such unseen responsibilities. As you walk beyond the town, you notice villagers already working barefoot in the flooded paddies despite the cool morning air. Pairs of oxen slowly pull wooden plows through the wet earth, while families prepare bundles of young rice seedlings that will soon be transplanted by hand. Children carry baskets almost as large as themselves, laughing quietly whenever someone slips into the mud. Life here follows the seasons with remarkable precision. Everyone understands what must be done, and when it must be done. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next without needing to be written. The canal you have come to inspect winds gently through the valley before dividing into smaller channels that feed each field in turn. An elderly farmer walks beside you, explaining where heavy rain sometimes weakens the embankments. He has lived in this village for nearly 70 years and remembers every flood, every drought, and every unusually warm spring. Listening to him, you realize that wisdom often comes not from books alone, but from paying careful attention to the same place throughout an entire lifetime. Every bend in the stream tells him a story that a stranger would never notice. When the inspection is complete, the farmer invites you to share tea beneath the shade of a blossoming cherry tree overlooking the fields. A simple cloth is spread upon the grass. Tea is poured into small ceramic cups. Beside it rests a plate of sweet rice cakes prepared that morning. For a while, neither of you speaks very much. There is little need. The wind carries loose petals through the air until they drift quietly across the tea, the grass, and the surface of the nearby water. Watching them fall, you understand why poets have written about cherry blossoms for centuries. Their beauty comes not only from how they bloom, but from how gracefully they disappear. As afternoon approaches, you continue your journey toward a small post station situated along one of the great highways connecting Edo with the western provinces. Although not as famous as the great Tokaido itself, the road still carries a steady flow of travelers. Merchants transporting silk and ceramics, Buddhist monks walking between temples, messengers riding swiftly beneath official authority, wandering scholars seeking conversation, and pilgrims traveling to sacred shrines scattered across the islands. Each traveler carries not only belongings, but also stories gathered from distant regions, allowing news to spread across Japan long before printed newspapers become common. You stop briefly at the roadside inn, where horses are changed, and weary travelers find food before continuing onward. Inside, the atmosphere is calm and welcoming. Sandals line the entrance neatly. Steam rises from large pots simmering over open hearths. The scent of soy, miso, fresh vegetables, and grilled river fish fills the warm wooden room. Strangers from different provinces sit together, sharing meals, occasionally comparing accents, customs, and weather from places hundreds of kilometers apart. Despite the strict order of Tokugawa society, moments like these quietly remind you how vast the country truly is. An elderly storyteller occupies one corner of the room, surrounded by several children and a handful of curious adults. His voice remains soft yet expressive as he recounts the tale of Minamoto no Yoshitsune, the brilliant young general whose victories centuries earlier became legendary throughout Japan. He speaks of impossible mountain marches, daring strategy, and unwavering loyalty. Yet he tells the story gently, focusing less upon the violence of war and more upon the fleeting nature of fame itself. The children listen with wide eyes, while the older listeners smile knowingly, aware that every hero, no matter how celebrated, eventually becomes another story passed from one generation to the next. Leaving the inn behind, you continue along the road until the afternoon light begins turning golden. Wildflowers cover the edges of the path. Butterflies drift lazily above them without apparent destination. In the distance, Mount Fuji rises above the horizon, its snow-covered peak glowing softly beneath the clear spring sky. Even from many days away, its presence dominates the landscape with quiet certainty. Countless travelers pause simply to admire it before continuing their journey. And today you find yourself doing the same. There is something deeply reassuring about mountains that remain unchanged, while generations of people come and go beneath them. Returning to the castle town near sunset, you discover preparations underway for the evening's blossom viewing. Families gather beneath rows of flowering cherry trees beside the river. Woven mats are spread across the ground. Lanterns hang from branches, their warm light slowly replacing the fading sunlight. Musicians tune a shamisen while children chase drifting petals through the grass. Merchants sell sweet dumplings and freshly brewed tea. There is laughter, but never the loud, hurried laughter of crowded cities. Instead, everything unfolds at a slower pace, as though everyone understands that the evening itself should not be rushed. You find a quiet place beneath one of the oldest cherry trees and sit watching the blossoms overhead. Every few moments another gentle breeze passes through the branches, releasing a shower of pale pink petals that spiral gracefully toward the earth. Some settle upon the river, where they begin drifting slowly downstream. Others come to rest upon sleeves, hats, and lanterns before being carried away again by the next breath of wind. No two fall in exactly the same way. Beside you, an elderly couple quietly share tea without speaking very much. They have likely watched these blossoms together for decades. Nearby, a young father lifts his daughter onto his shoulders so she can reach one of the lower branches. Further away, several monks walk silently beneath the trees, their robes moving gently through the falling petals like shadows passing across water. Everyone experiences the same evening differently, yet all are united by the simple act of noticing beauty before it disappears. As darkness settles across the valley, the lanterns reflect softly upon the river, while the cherry blossoms glow faintly in the moonlight. Somewhere beyond the town, frogs begin singing from newly flooded rice fields. The sound rises and falls in gentle waves, joining the distant murmur of flowing water and the occasional note of a bamboo flute carried upon the cool spring breeze. You remain beneath the blossoms long after many others have returned home, reluctant to leave an evening that already feels like a memory, even while it is still unfolding. Eventually you begin the quiet walk back through lantern-lit streets toward your modest home. Your sandals brush aside fallen petals gathered along the edges of the road. Behind you, the festival continues softly beneath the trees, but its sounds grow fainter with every step, until only the steady chorus of frogs and the whisper of the evening wind remain. Inside your home, the familiar warmth of the charcoal brazier welcomes you once more. Your swords are placed carefully beside the wall, your outer robe folded neatly, your notes from the day written slowly beneath the light of a single oil lamp. Before extinguishing the flame, you pause for one final glance through the open shoji toward the garden where several cherry blossoms have drifted silently onto the moss. Tomorrow the wind may carry them away entirely, yet that is precisely what makes them beautiful. They ask nothing except to be appreciated while they are here. And with that thought gently resting in your mind, the lamp is extinguished. The room falls quiet once more, and another peaceful spring night settles across feudal Japan, beneath a sky filled with stars that have watched these same mountains, these same rivers, and these same people for countless generations before your own. As the months continue to pass, you slowly begin to understand that the life of a samurai is not defined by the rare moments history chooses to remember. It is shaped by the thousands of ordinary days that history almost always forgets. The careful bow offered to a neighbor before sunrise, the quiet scratching of a brush across paper, the patient walk beneath cedar trees, the warmth of tea shared with a traveler, the sound of temple bells drifting through the morning mist, the laughter of children beside flooded rice fields, the falling of cherry blossoms that remain beautiful precisely because they cannot last forever. These small moments become the true rhythm of life, repeated season after season, until they quietly form the character of a person. Looking back across the year, you have walked through every season of feudal Japan. You have watched snow settle upon castle roofs, spring awaken beneath clouds of blossoms, summer fill the valleys with the chorus of cicadas, and autumn paint the mountains with crimson leaves. Each season has carried its own lessons, yet all have shared the same quiet understanding, that life moves not in great leaps, but in gentle cycles. Mornings become evenings, blossoms become leaves, Children become elders. One generation quietly gives way to the next, while the mountains remain exactly where they have always stood. Perhaps that is one of the reasons Japan has fascinated travelers for centuries. Beneath its castles and famous warriors lies a culture that found extraordinary meaning within ordinary things. A single flower placed carefully inside a room, the sound of rain falling upon a tiled roof, steam rising from a cup of tea on a winter morning, footprints disappearing beneath fresh snow before anyone else awakens. These were never considered insignificant. They were reminders that beauty often exists in moments too small for history books to record. The samurai themselves eventually faded into history. The castles changed. Governments rose and fell. Railways replaced old highways. Paper lanterns gave way to electric lights. And the world continued moving forward faster than anyone living in the 17th century could possibly have imagined. Yet even today, if you wander through a quiet temple garden before sunrise, walk beneath ancient cedar forests, hear the distant ringing of a temple bell, or watch cherry blossoms drifting silently across a river, you may still catch a faint glimpse of the world you have visited tonight. Not exactly as it once was, but close enough to remind you that history is never entirely gone. It lingers within landscapes, traditions, and memories, patiently waiting for someone to notice. And now, as this quiet journey through feudal Japan comes to an end, the castle town settles into another peaceful night. Lanterns burn lower until only a few remain glowing beside narrow streets. The last footsteps disappear along the roads. The watchman's wooden clappers echo once through the darkness, before silence returns. Somewhere high in the mountains, a small temple keeps its evening vigil beneath the stars. Somewhere in the valley below, a farmer prepares for another sunrise. Somewhere inside a modest wooden home, an unknown samurai places his swords beside the wall, extinguishes the final lamp, and lies down upon the familiar tatami after another ordinary day of quiet service. His name will never appear in the great chronicles of Japan. No famous battle will remember him. No monument will bear his likeness. Yet lives like his were the foundation upon which an entire age was built. And perhaps there is something deeply comforting in knowing that history belongs not only to emperors, generals, and legends, but also to ordinary people who simply lived with kindness, discipline, and quiet purpose. Thank you for walking these ancient roads, crossing these rivers, climbing these temple steps, and sharing this peaceful day in feudal Japan. Wherever you may be listening from tonight, I hope these gentle stories have carried you far from the noise of the modern world, if only for a little while. And as sleep continues to find you, may your own journey be as peaceful as the quiet valley, now resting beneath the moonlight. Good night.
you.